Hello, welcome to my presentation. I'm with someone from Hong Kong Polytechnic University. In this presentation, we are going to present our latest work about faulty GNSS measurement exclusion in factorial optimization based on the measurement procedures. This is the collaboration work between Purdue and Southeast University. Here is a performance comparison of factorial optimization. We call it FGO in this presentation with the conventional EKF for GNSS and integration. The real one is the typical single point positioning. We can see the error fluctuates dramatically from the black curve. That's the ground truth. And after you apply the IMU using EKF, the trajectory is slightly improved compared with the real one, the single point positioning. But if we apply factorial optimization for the GNSS IMU integration using a tightly coupled scheme, the positioning error is decreased significantly compared with the conventional EKF. So why? We answer this question in a very recent webinar, also published in this ION journal paper. And in here, we find the FGO use batch data, increase the robustness of the state estimator against the outline measurement. And FGO also applies the iterative optimization. It means multiple iteration is applied for the state estimation. But the disadvantage is like FGO will increase the computation load. The advantage is like it's robust when two assumptions are validated. Which two? Those two. The first is the Gaussian noise assumption for EKF and FGO are required. The second one is the first order mark chain requirement. This is required for EKF but not required by FGO. If those two are validated in urban chaos, the FGO still can get better performance than the EKF. And then the FGO is solved by iterative nonlinear optimization. This is the major difference between the EKF and FGO. So what will happen if the fault detection and exclusion are applied to factorial optimization? Because in FGO, we got more data. What will happen? This is to be answered in this presentation. So let's go on. In here, the residual can be calculated based on the measurement and the state, the expected measurement, and the test statistic can be calculated, and then the faulty measurement can be excluded one by one. The blue one represents the survived healthy satellites, and the red one represents the polluted, maybe the multipass or analog satellite. This is a very typical snapshot-based for detection and exclusion. Usually we call it consistent check. This work is also part of our previous published paper here. We do experiment in typical urban chaos in Tokyo, and we compare three methods. The first one is DGS positioning using conventional weighted square, and the second method is DGS positioning plus weighted square based on the graded search, and the last one is the exhaustive search. In this one, we believe this one is a theoretical based, but all these methods in terms of FDE only considers the measurement in one epoch, snapshot-based FDE. And what about the result? We get a performance like 11 meters in such kind of urban chaos. But this is a very interesting epoch data. You can find in this epoch, we get 3 healthy satellites, the long side, and 2 multipass, and 4 NLOS, 6 polluted signals. This is not healthy. And 3 healthy satellites. It means the polluted signal are more than the healthy one. What will happen? We get the most consistent but erroneous group of satellites. So our idea here I am going to formulate the theoretical problem. Why it happens? The first thing is like here's the measurement, the Pseudorange measurement. Here's the expected range, and here's the profiles, and inospheric and tropospheric, and here's the multipass. And then we can do the weighted square, and here's the geometry, weighting, geometry, and weighting, and here's the Pseudorange measurement. We can get the state. In terms of this case, 5 satellites are all healthy, okay, healthy, no NLOS or no multipass. But what will happen if we got 2 polluted signals? For example, the multipass and NLOS. The error will be propagated through the geometry matrix. And then the positioning is also polluted. In this case, we got true false in 5 satellites. The healthy data redundancy is quite limited. It can also be a big problem. So additional is are required. Our idea is like, can we using batch data or sliding window data, considering more data for detection and exclusion. For example, here's 4 epoch. The black one is a healthy one, and the red one is the pretty one. Using more data, all temporal data are considered for geo and apply it to FDE. So what will happen? Let's say different from EKF, because due to the first order Markov chain assumption, only the current epoch and the propagation are considered in the EKF. So this is the major difference. The overview of the proposed methods is like, first, we do the state initialization based on all the measurements, no exclusion at this stage. We can do the Pseudorange modeling and the velocity estimation based on a raw Doppler measurement. And we can do the state initialization by solving this vector graph optimization. So by solving this FGO, we can get the state at all the epochs. This is called initialization. And then we can do the FDE based on the initialization. We can exclude the plotted satellites one by one based on all the measurements inside the sliding window. The for detection and for exclusion and factor optimization, those 3 steps do iteratively until the test statistic satisfy the chi-square threshold. So in terms of the FGO positioning framework, we actually in our previous work here, we open source FGO-based GNSS positioning framework. It can first perform the GNSS positioning based on Pseudorange and Doppler, and also can do the RTK positioning based on the carrier phase, double difference carrier phase, double difference the Pseudorange and the Doppler. And the open source code is here. Please feel free to take a try. Okay. Here is roughly how the system presents how the system initialization performs. The first is like the state includes the first epoch, second epoch, and the last epoch. And for each epoch, we estimate the positioning, velocity, and the clock bias for each epoch. And then we can formulate the Pseudorange factor and formulate the velocity factor. For a Pseudorange factor, here's the measurement, the Pseudorange measurement, here's the observation and the expected observation, and here's the velocity, and here's the expected velocity observation. And then we can do the FGO by using the linear solver, series solver. And for more detail, please readers are recommend to read this paper. And for detection and exclusion, for the snapshot, the concept is like in this paper, this is implemented from this page. This is implemented in this page, in this paper. This is a vector graph, okay? We only exclude the 40 measurements of the current epoch data, but optimize all the states at the same time. What I mean, I do the FDE in this epoch, but after I exclude unhealthy measurements, and then I do the optimization through the whole trajectory or sliding window. How I achieve this? First, I will calculate the residuals of current epoch, calculate residuals, and then do the normalization based on its uncertainty. And then we can calculate the test statistic based on the normalization. And then we can compare the test statistic with a chi-square threshold based on a given significance level and degree of freedom. If this is not satisfied, it means there are faults inside the slide window, and then I can do the fault exclusion based on the largest normalized residual inside the current epoch. And after I remove this potential unhealthy measurement, and then solve this problem again. And here's for the snapshot. Okay, here's a concept difference between the snapshot and the sliding window-based FDE. For the snapshot, I only consider the current epoch, the latest epoch, and for the sliding window, I consider a measurement inside several epoch inside the sliding window. For example, in here we consider 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, consider 5 epochs, and we exclude the 40 measurements in the sliding window, but optimize all the states at the same time. This is for the proposed sliding window-based FDE. Okay, how we achieve this mathematically? First, we can calculate the Pseudorange residuals for the current epoch and normalize the Pseudorange residual for the current epoch. And then we can combine the normalized residuals of all the epochs inside the sliding window. We get this one. And then we can do the test statistic calculation based on all the measurements inside the sliding window. For example, we got 20 epochs and 15 satellites for each epoch, and we get 300 measurements and corresponding residuals. And then we do the similar operations and remove the factor with the largest normalized residual and solve the problem again to see if still satisfy the chi-square test. Okay, let's take a look between the snapshot and the sliding window-based threshold of chi-square test. For a typical, very conventional snapshot-based chi-square threshold, the degree of freedom is like within, for example, 20. Typically, for GPS and Beidou satellite, if we only consider 2 constellations, we get about 20 satellites in open chaos or open sky, and the threshold typically like 50. And here is a chi-square PDF. It's majority of the chi-square distribution is within this area. The threshold is within this area. But for the proposed FDE, the sliding window-based FDE, the measurement can reach like 300 degree of freedom, and the threshold can also reach like 400. It's very different. The DOF is like about 300. The chi-square threshold is about 355, giving a significance level. Here is the significance level of this value. Okay, let's look into the experimental result. Here is the experimental vehicle, and here's the receiver. We use a typical commercial level U-block receiver. And for the first solution to be compared is the FGO, no FDE. And the second one is FDE plus snapshot-based FDE. And the last one is the FGO plus FDE using sliding window. This is the proposed scheme. The first scenario is like this. We call it light urban. We got some buildings, tall buildings occasionally, and some trees can cause multipath and analog signals. And the scenario is called urban Kenya. And later I will mention this is also part of our open source data set, Open Navy, which is also to be presented in this year's ION conference. Okay, let's go on. Let's move on. Here is the trajectory. Let's put in the light urban. Okay, using the FGO, you can find using the FGO, the error is like 4.2, and after we apply the snapshot-based FDE, the error decreased to 3.6, slightly improved after we do the FDE. And interestingly, if we apply sliding window-based FDE, it decreased to 3.3. Why? The major reason is because if we apply the sliding window, we can reconsider the misdetected faults in the previous epoch. That's why we get the improvement like this. For example, some improvements. Okay, let's FGO snapshot, FGO sliding window, get some improvements. And if you look into the data, till the window size, different window size, what will happen? If your window size is pretty large, pretty small, what will happen? You can find, for example, the red one is for FGO, and the green one is FGO FDE for snapshot, only do FDE in one epoch. And if we consider multiple epoch, window size of 5, 10, 15, and 20, okay, the error for the first one, the error decrease compared with the conventional FGO using snapshot. But if we increase the slide window from 50 to 20, the improvement is almost keep unchanged. It means the window is almost enough, keep unchanged. And if we look into the sunlight numbers, okay, the same. The blue one represents the proposed method. The sun number decrease dramatically in some epochs. For example, decrease to less than 15 satellites. Here's the error. Okay, the reason for the limited improvement from the sliding window FD is that the limited 40 measurement. It means the 40 measurement is very limited in this kind of light urban scenario. It means the FDE using snapshots can already exclude the potential for the measurement. And if you increase the sliding window size, it's almost no improvement because the size is one epoch snapshot is almost enough. Increase to 2, you got some slight improvement. And if you still increase the window size, they will be keep unchanged because the window size does not introduce improvements anymore. Okay, let's look into a more challenged data. It means we get more polluted signals. This is part of our OpenAV dataset. This is also to be presented by Dr. Xu in this year's presentation, maybe in another session. And in this data, we test the deep urban Kenya for our FDE. Okay, this is for another data. Also, if you are interested, you can also try other data in the future. Okay, let's see the data we're going to try. Okay, you can find for the level one, you can find the error is very large in this kind of scenario because very noisy GNSS measurement. And we can find the error even increase slightly. If we increase slightly window size, it increase. It's very strange. That's why. Okay, I will introduce here. The first thing is like why the snapshot FDE is worse than the conventional FGO. The why is like if we exclude more satellites, the remaining satellites can be very limited. As a result, the geometry can be very, very poor. As a result, the performance can get worse. This is for the first reason why the snapshot-based FDE can be worse than the FGO because of the poor geometry. So why, if you increase the window size, why it still get worse? The reason is like, ideally, we want to see such kind of scenario. It means we have more healthy data to help the anomalous exclusion. It means, for example, in here, we got two poor measurements. Poor measurement. And this epoch, we are very lucky. We get all the measurement and all the measurements are healthy. And with all this data, potentially, that's what will happen in the first light urban test. Okay, but in the second urban Kenya, very noisy GNSS measurement. For example, the case can be like this. All historical majority of the historical measurement can be poor, can be noisy GNSS measurement. For example, here's the error loss multipath. It means your historical data is bad. You still consider the bad data into the batch optimization. It doesn't work. It cannot help you in the FDE. It cannot help you FDE. That's why we look into the last epoch. That's why we increase the sliding window. We didn't get the improvement. This is why we cannot get the improvement even we increase the sliding window. Therefore, it's very interesting. How should we select the window size? In other words, how should we select the healthy or good measurement to increase our healthy measurement redundancy to further improve the performance of the in the future? This is one of our future work. Okay, let's look into the future work. The first conclusion is like we propose a sliding window-based 40 GNSS measurement exclusion with experimental comparison with the snapshot-based FDE. This paper compares the effects of the window size upon the 40 GNSS measurement exclusion. Larger window size tends to lead better accuracy. Actually, this is for the first light urban scenario. But very interestingly, we find this assumption does not hold in the very urban Kenyas, very deep urban Kenyas. Our future work is like the first is to investigate the calculation of a protection level for interactive monitoring for in the future. We will consider more satellite considerations, for example, granules and Galileo. It means we get more data, potentially more healthy data for FDE. And the last one, we will study the correlation between historical epoch for sliding window selection. It means we are going to study the correlation from different epoch and try to find out how to select the phase sliding window to further improve the performance of FDE. Thank you. Please feel free to try our open source code, the graph GSLib I mentioned in the previous slide, and please feel free to try our OpenAV dataset. It's going to be open source after this conference. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me through this email. Thank you.